Okay, we're back. We're live. We're at ThinkTech Talks here on a given Wednesday. In Hawaii, the state of clean energy here on ThinkTech Talks. And we have two special guests, Senator Mike Gabbard and Representative Chris Lee. Senator Gabbard is the chair of the Senate Energy Committee in the Hawaii State Legislature, and Representative Lee is the chair of the House Energy Committee. What a crowd. Fabulous. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having us.
Hello, Jay. Good to be here.
So today we want to talk about actually everything, but we'd like to talk about energy legislation this year, 2014, and also next year to get a handle on how things are going and how there are influences, including influences at Energy Day just last week, how that might affect the thinking in the legislature and what you guys are thinking about lately. But before we get into the mix of it, we always want to talk to Rob DeVerterterta of course, I'm getting to that. And Kate Aurelio from Hawaii Energy. And Ray Starling is here as co-host. He's got a microphone, watch out. Okay, so let's start with you, Kate. You got something about Hawaii Energy you want to share with us here in the Negawatt Moment, right?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you, Jay. First, I want to remind everyone that Hawaii Energy is the ratepayer-funded conservation and energy efficiency program for the islands of Hawaii, Molokai, Lanai, Maui, and Honolulu County. And we offer cash rebates and other incentives for residential and commercial customers to install energy efficiency measures in their house or in their business. But yes, came here specifically today to talk about the new release of our Water and Wastewater Energy Management Best Practices Handbook.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay, there it is. There it is. And it's the connection of energy and wastewater, right?
Well, energy and water, which includes wastewater. It's called
the confluence, so to speak.
Or the nexus, the water energy nexus. That's correct. Water costs energy, which obviously costs money. And we have been charged by the PUC to work with all the water and wastewater operators on the islands to help them reduce their consumption. So this book provides a guideline and some tips on different ways that they can do that, both water, wastewater, and also general practices that apply to their offices and their pumping stations and lighting, as well as
just major work then, huh?
Yeah, it took a lot of development, and actually we worked with programs from the mainland who developed similar books. It was started in New York, and then it went to Wisconsin, and then we modified the book.
Now, who is this for? Is this for me? I'm a homeowner, and I know I have wastewater.
Well, you're welcome
to electricity too.
You're welcome to read through it. It's available for download on our website for all the ratepayers who helped pay for this production of the book. But it's mostly geared towards the large water and wastewater operators. Well, both large and small operators. It includes the big customers or big people such as Sand Island wastewater treatment facility, but also the smaller water operators on the Big Island.
Who actually wrote it, Kate?
The book was originally written in New York by NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Development Authority. Uh-huh. And we modified it so it was more specific to our market here in Hawaii. So we removed some things that were not applicable in Hawaii, such as heating costs, but then we added a few things that made more sense in our particular market.
Oh, good. So you said I could download it?
Yes.
That'd be a lot easier than printing copies of a book so thick.
Yes.
Where do I download it from?
If you go to www.hawaiienergy.com and then you click on the link for water and wastewater solutions, it's available for download for free.
Okay, this is your turn now, gentlemen. Make believe that this is a hearing either in the Senate or the House Energy Committees. And Kate has just testified. And, you'd like to flesh out exactly what's going on.
I thought we were going to get the chance to grill you.
If you like. What would you ask her?
Oh, well, I guess the first thing is, especially when you have a lot of information that's, obviously this is a pretty thick thing to digest. If there are one or two things that are real takeaways for the average homeowner, what is tangible? What is it that we ought to be remembering to change our habits, perhaps, and save ourselves money?
Well, that's a great question. As I said, the book is not necessarily geared towards homeowners or residential customers, but there are things that everyone can do in their daily life to reduce their energy consumption and their water consumption. Just think of if you shorten your shower by 1 or 2 minutes, you can save, I think, a couple $100 on your electric bill annually. If you also think about the time of use that you may use your hot water in your house, although you may not be directly billed for peak demand as a residential customer, you're still contributing to the demand overall for the state of Hawaii. And so depending on whether you do things at 6 o'clock at night or if you do it at 11 o'clock at night, such as running your dishwasher, that's a way that you can help the whole state meet their energy goals.
You know,
My
on the shower
dishwasher's
thing,
right here, so it's pretty energy efficient.
on the shower thing, we had a bit of a discussion about this last show, wasn't it, Ray? And we thought there was a way that was not included in the written materials that might help the whole state. And it was, and this is something that came up in the 60s a lot, but it hasn't come up since. It's the whole idea about showering together. Because if two people shower at the same time, you're using, half as much hot water for each one, therefore half as much electrical energy. So I know it's not in your book. I can make a reasonable guess and assume it's not in your book, but I want to mention that here on ThinkTech, we're open-minded about that.
I had a question, Jay, in terms of how do you plan to get this out, since this is best practices to, besides, of course, lots of people watch ThinkTech Hawaii, but how do you want to get this out to the industry that will benefit from what you guys have put together?
Well, we've been in direct contact with a lot of the water operators and wastewater facility operators across the islands that we serve. We've been in talks with Sand Island Access and Sand Island, and also out in Eva and on the Big Island. So we've directly sent copies to those people that we're in touch with. We released a press release, and we're hoping that other people will see the release and they'll contact us directly if we haven't contacted them yet. We're also in talks with the Hawaii Rural Water Association, which serves a lot of the smaller water operators on the other islands as well as Oahu. Those people are harder to reach sometimes. So there's an association that works directly with those people, and we're trying to work closely with them.
Okay, great. Great book. A great new piece that will help Hawaii in water and electric. Kate Aurelio, Hawaii Energy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay.
For this negawatt moment. Okay, we're going to move on, but we have like 4 minutes before our first break, and I wonder to take a moment here, sort of refresh up on things. It seems to me that your committees have become more engaged in the energy process than they were in years past. It is more demanding, and you have interacted with so much that has happened in the Clean Energy Initiative. Am I right about this?
I think, when you look at it, there's a lot of shift going on in Hawaii across many different markets. But the one that's a real paradigm shift that's created more change than any other lately, I think, is the energy industry. And you're talking about a transition from where we were 20 years ago, and in that time, even maybe 10 years ago, you see the birth of a solar industry that's boomed, and alternative transportation that's taking off. And now we're focused on our clean energy initiative and moving toward a renewable future from fossil fuel dependency. I mean, these things are massive shifts that everybody feels not only when they get in their car and drive to work, but in their pocketbook. And that's what I think we're dealing with and trying to help folks with right now.
And Chris is right, Jay, because in 2008, when we had that conversation, when we signed that Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative with the Department of Energy, with all the stakeholders, got everybody involved, talk sorry Hawaiian style, let's come up with something and set those RPS standards so that we wanted to reach 70% clean renewable by the year 2030. That's 40% clean renewable and 30% efficiency. It became more in people's consciousness, that public awareness of what the goal, and actually how do you get there? We've got world-class wind, world-class sun, we've got an active volcano on the Big Island for geothermal. We can do this. We can be the leader that we're supposed to be in clean energy, but it's going to take everybody working together.
Yeah, and your committee's legislature has been really active in this. I mean, it's a transformation that requires participation by all the elements of government and the community, and you guys are right there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, based on the Clean Energy Day and based on, what's happened in the last couple of years and your perception of the whole program. Where are we on the? You both spoke about this last Tuesday, but where are we in the continuum of clean energy? If you can put it in a short description.
I would think that we can cite all the numbers, right? We're roughly about 18, almost 19% toward our 70% renewable goal, things like that. We're well on our way. But I think the real difference that I've seen in the past couple of years, and this is exemplified by the Clean Energy Day, and really a lot of thanks to the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum for bringing everybody together. But the very fact that in that room, you can look out, and I looked out as I was giving my little talk, and it's all the major players from across the industry, from the renewable side, from standard generation, from utilities, from all the different players, and they're all in the same place, talking about the same stuff, networking, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. In fact, I turned around while I was at the podium and took a picture, a selfie of myself with the entire room behind
us.
Group
selfie.
That's right. But it's because people don't realize, and even I didn't realize until that time, that these are the people that are really going to set our path forward. And they're the ones working to resolve all the different issues. And it's impressive. And it's the first time, I think, in a long time that on any issue you have all the major players working together.
Yeah. I think there's that sense of urgency as well, not only having all the stakeholders, everybody that's involved with this issue, but looking at our numbers. As Chris mentioned, we're at 18% toward that 40% goal in clean renewable. And you break that 18% down, the Big Island's at 48%, right? And Maui's at 29%, and that Kauai is at 19%, and Oahu's at about 12%. And there's a bit of competitiveness there in terms of, let's do this, and let's do this now.
So much news, so much happening.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break, come back, and we'll get into exactly what happened in this past legislature and where it's driving for next legislature. Senator Mike Gabbard and Representative Chris Lee, the chairs of the Senate and House Committees on Energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii, in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, talking about energy legislation this year and last. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Willow Chang Alion, and I host a show called The Art of Life. We air live every Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. And what we do is basically we focus on individuals who create a unique sense of place for Hawaii. These are movers and shakers, artists, innovators. They are also traditionalists. They're all involved in the archival process, and they make this place a unique place, one that makes Hawaii a richer place to be. I hope you do join us, and certainly tell your friends about the show, whether they live here or they live abroad. It's a way to give back to our community. We're keeping
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here with Senator Mike Gabbard, Representative Chris Lee, and Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We're talking about energy legislation this year and next year. So, gee whiz, we're in a different place. I mean, that's what I got out of the Clean Energy Day. I found a lot of people, including you guys, were willing to make edgy comments, willing to really, call a spade, and to be, candid about things, and to, kind of state the condition and the issues, however hard they might be. And so here we are in what appeared to me to be a kind of what I said in the program, a transformation of the transformation. Things are changing even around the changing that they're changing, So let's take a looking backward at 2014. What happened this past session?
I'd like to bring up the barrel tax. For your viewers out there, we actually, as a state, the legislature in 2010 is when we passed the barrel tax. To give you an idea of scope, last year, 2013, we imported 44.2 million barrels of oil. So back in 2010, the idea came up from one of your colleagues in the House, was why don't we put a tax, because at that time, prior to 2010, the tax was 5 cents on every barrel of oil. So it was introduced to raise it $1. And as you can imagine, there were some arguments on how that would be. The whole point of it was to have energy security and food security. Well, we happened to be in the midst of a shortfall in terms of the budget, so the money committees took a look at that and they said, well, why don't we bump it up to $1.55 and we'll take $1 to the general fund, and then you guys in agriculture and energy can kind of split the rest in the emergency revolving fund. So anyway, the final thing that made it out was that where it is today, and that is 60 cents of that $1.05 goes to the general fund, 15 cents goes to energy, 15 cents goes to agriculture. 10 cents, or 10% goes to the, 10 cents of that $1.05 goes to HNEI, Hawaii Natural Energy.
That's a good thing.
And 5 cents goes to the Emergency Revolving Fund. So what we did this last legislature, because HNEI had been defunded, there was a sunset on their funding, so they lost their funding. We reinstated that funding. And then what we also did was we took away the sunset and made it until 2030. So I think it's a good thing. And what I would like to do, and Chris and I haven't really talked about this in terms of for next session, is I would like to revisit that and see if we can get, instead of 15 cents going to energy, if we could bump that up. In fact, the bill that I introduced this last time, we started at 42.5 cents. And then as it went around, it went down to 25 cents, and then went down to 20 cents, and then it ended up, the money committees didn't go with it. Because I think part of it is, even though there's a surplus now, once those money committees are getting 60 cents of that $1.05 every year, and it comes out to almost $24 million.
Get hooked on it.
Yeah, they get hooked on it, right. So I would like to see that money, more money going into clean renewable energy, energy efficiency, because that's what it's all about, really. I mean, this is all that petroleum that we're importing, so why not put it in for what it's being used for?
I think that nexus is really important.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing you can really talk about is that not only is this funding our transition by using something we're trying to get away from to fund something that we're trying to get to, but on top of that, this is ultimately saving money for ratepayers and taxpayers and everybody else, because the strides that we make every year are decreasing costs in the long term. And that's something that's critically important.
And for example, our energy office, I just read in a paper this morning that they need like 5.8 million. That's their annual operating budget. Well, right now, with the barrel tax at 15 cents, they get about 3.9. Well, why don't we, instead of the money coming out of the general, why don't we just use that, completely fund our Hawaii Energy Office, and then, inspire those guys to keep working towards our clean renewable energy goals.
Well, what I get out of this is that the barrel tax is a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic, and it reflects the times, as it were. Every year, things change, and maybe the barrel tax should change.
Yeah.
Ultimately, with a view toward doing what was way back intended as the original purpose for it. But I also get out of this that you guys work together, and I noticed that last year and the year before, and that is really something.
Yeah, it is.
And I
just do what he says.
No, that's not true. I think because we're both collaborators and we believe in collaboration, and we sit down and talk story. We don't agree on 100% of the things, but that's the neat thing about it. We both have the vision to see where we're going, and we just,
But I have to say, it is really nice. In the legislature in the last days, when things are crazy and people are negotiating and heads are butting, it's great that we can sit down and watch everybody else in the Capitol go nuts and argue, and we're just sitting here because we've already come to understanding, and we really talk things through, and we're open and transparent with each other. And I think that's really effective.
It's great. You can make so much more progress that way.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, they all should follow you and watch you and everything.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, what else? How about solar? Solar is a big deal for a lot of people. It's coming to the mainstream for sure. Who would have guessed a few years ago that we'd have as much solar as we have? And how much legislation did you do in 2014 around solar, and what do you think going forward?
Well, I think there's a couple big issues that were on the front burner going into the session. Number one, tax credit issues from prior years had settled down a little bit. There's a little bit more certainty in the industry, but what the new challenge is folks who invested their money in their system want to get it put on their roof, and then are running into problems getting a sign-off from the utility to be able to flip the switch and turn it on. And this is something that's being found in circuits around the island and islands around the state. And the more and more people who want to connect, the longer and longer the line is getting to make sure that folks can connect on a timely basis. And so what we wanted to do is try and address that and see if we can't get some sort of basic framework and set of rules in place so that folks who invest tens of thousands of dollars and expect to be able to put a system on their roofs aren't left in limbo with no end date to their install and no communication from the various folks who are trying to help them.
And one of those pieces of legislation that Chris and I worked on was what we call the Grid Modernization Bill. And it passed, but it was basically stripped down. We wanted an appropriation to be in there to direct the PUC, to require the PUC to ask the utility to say, okay, this is what we're going to do to modernize this grid. You've got all these people trying to put PV systems up on your roof. You're using a model that's been there since the same one that Thomas Edison used back in the late 1800s. Let's start, what can you do to modernize it? But unfortunately, as happens sometimes down there at the legislature, we did not get, it did pass, but the appropriation was taken out, and now it's just kind of like the direction to the PUC is this guiding principles, please keep this on your radar. But one of the things, an offshoot of that I thought was kind of cool was that shortly after that, I think it was in late April, the PUC came out with their 4 decisions and orders and said to the utility, okay, this is what we want you to do. Very specifically, interconnection situation, reduction of costs, et cetera, and we want this by the end of August. So our understanding is August 26th is when the HECO will come back with their answer to the PUC. So although we did not get the whole enchilada in terms of that grid modernization bill, I think the conversation that we had, the hearings that we had, kind of moved the PUC to come out with this, this orders and decisions.
I'm sure it was a motivation.
Yeah. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
But that
now-
wasn't the only thing. There's a couple other bills, I think, as well. One, taking a look at the divide between the folks who install PV on the rooftops and the folks who are the roofing specialists who do roof work. I mean, who has liability when something's installed and now your roof's leaking?
Big
So we were able
question.
to work that out, I think, to the satisfaction of most folks and solve that question. Next up, I think, is what's going to happen when you have situations where people live in condos and want to have PV but really can't buy into that. And Mike had a great bill for that.
Well, we call it the community solar bill, community renewable bill, energy bill, and it was one of those things, great disappointments for both of us because we worked so hard on it, and it came about as a result of looking at the example that I use is in Rifle, Colorado, a little town out by the airport. They've got a solar array, a solar farm with close to 4,000 solar panels, and it's owned by Jimmy's Pizza, a Montessori school, and about 3,000 other individuals and families. They own it, and however much electricity that is generated by that solar array, if you own 100 panels, let's say, and Jimmy's owns 1,000 panels, they figure it all out and they decrease that from their electric bill. And then about 6 months ago, Jay, I got invited to speak at a area condo managers luncheon, and I brought this up. And one guy stood up in the back. He said, "Wait a minute, Senator. I got 400 people that live in my, because they live in a condo, right? I got 400 people that live in my condo, and you mean to say that if we had got some land out there somewhere, an acre or something, we put a solar farm, then each of us could benefit from that decrease?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh my God." So that's the idea. So this way, people, whether renters or people who don't have that roof space, can actually take advantage of this.
So really a question of equality, right?
Yeah.
Because folks who own
Yeah.
your single-family home have the ability in most cases to
Yeah.
put something on their roof. But if you don't have that option, how are you going to take advantage of all this technology and all the savings that everyone's getting out of this?
Yeah.
Because it's state taxpayer money that's being put forward to help develop some of these programs and initiatives, and everyone ought to be able to benefit.
Yeah. And so that's why Chris and I have already talked. We want to make that a part of the majority package in the Senate and the House. So if we can get agreement with our colleagues, and what that does is it stands out. There are a few bills that are a part of that package, and those are the ones we're really focusing on. So that's one of the things we plan to do. One other one, real quick one, was what I call the Solar on Ag bill. We had some companies that wanted to put large utility-scale solar farms, say, for example, out in central Oahu or other places, on B and C ag land, but they're not allowed to do that. Well, the bill that passed allows them to do that, and they've got to get a SUP, a supplemental use permit, lays out all the details. But the other thing is, we made it a part of the bill that they have to lease to small farmers some of the land there where the solar farm is at 50% less than the market is asking for that. So we're encouraging farmers to, whether it's between the panels, you can have
dual use.
bees, aquaponics, sheep farming.
Sure.
One sheep farmer in the North Shore is going crazy over this because we don't have enough room, So imagine having their sheep, going in and out and grazing between the solar panels.
The sheep like the shade.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
This is exactly what's on Lanai, where there's a
Yeah,
solar farm on
yeah.
Lanai. Sheep underneath.
Yeah.
Sort of a lawnmower.
That's
effect.
right. There you go. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but I'd like to just, before we do that, I'd like to just say, maybe we can cover some of this. It seems to me, from Energy Day and otherwise, that there are a lot of elements that are coming to fruition these days. There are a lot of things on the drawing boards that, you know, including the response of Hawaiian Electric to those 4 orders coming soon, including the fact that there are big solar farms going in, and the technology itself with utilities like KIUC and, for that matter, HECO, with these projects to do storage, the magic storage possibilities. And when you put them all together, solar is king. When you put them all together, maybe we can go overnight with solar, or partly. And interconnect is not a problem if you have storage. Right? So maybe between now and January 15th, we'll see some other things.
We'll solve it all.
That make you happy. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, yeah.
Take a short break. That's Senator Mike Gabbard and Representative Chris Lee, the chairs of the Senate and House Energy Committees, here on ThinkTech in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, talking about energy legislation this year and next. We'll be right back.
Aloha, this is Keli'i Akina. It's my privilege to be the host of Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Ehana Kako, what does that mean? Well, many people have heard of Epule Kako, let's pray together. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Let's work together to build a better economy, government, and society. And every week, Monday, from 2 to 3 o'clock, you will see movers and shakers and other people who are working together to build a better economy, government, and society. Again, I'm Keli'i Akina on the Ehana Kako weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Aloha. See you here Mondays, 2 to 3.
Back, we're live with Senator Mike Gabbard, Representative Chris Lee of the Senate and House Energy Committees, here on ThinkTech, talking about the state of clean energy and energy legislation this year and next. So yeah, you guys have thoughts about that, about these possibilities that have emerged, are emerging right now? We seem to be in a time of flux when these elements, if they come together proper, could make your life easier and could actually solve a lot of the problems you've been wrestling with, no?
I hope so. You know, I think there's a lot of change that's not just happening because it's happening, because the state says we want to be clean and renewable, but because that's ultimately where the market's going. I mean, you have utilities that for 100 years have generated power and sold it to people, and now for the first time you have decentralized people generating their own power with PV and other things, and that's going to have to be adapted to. And so we got to figure out very quickly how we go from 20th century to 21st. And that's something that even if we do nothing, is going to happen on its own, perhaps in a longer time span, but it's going to happen. And so we're there to try and shepherd that, push it forward as much as possible so that we have financially sound and commercially viable utilities that can pick up the slack when people can't generate their own power, and to allow more people to generate their own power so that they save money, and we all benefit.
So many things are happening.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things related to that is that we looked at this last session was energy storage, and it was one of those bills that didn't make it across the finish line. But even though, and it wasn't just for, you know, the guy that's got his little batteries out in his backyard and he's doing a couple solar panels, but for utility size projects, that it was designed to give a credit to these guys, to encourage, because that's what's happening. We've got all the solar, but we've got to start dealing with storage. But one positive, even though it didn't pass, shortly after the session ended, I think May 5th, HECO came out with a request for proposal for a 60 to 200 megawatt storage, you know, proposal for energy storage.
That'd be
so,
huge.
Yeah. So it's another example of how what's happening at the legislature, even though sometimes the bills that you want, the bills that you shepherd, you do all that you can to get them passed, you talk to your colleagues, all the things that we love doing, right, Chris? But we're not the only ones.
I love you guys.
We're not the only ones that are watching everything that's going on. Obviously, the PUC is watching, the utility is watching, and it sometimes it influences what they're doing, their behavior. So
But it's great because, I mean, technology is changing
Yeah,
just as fast
yeah.
as policy and everything else.
Yeah.
And you have new types of storage, you know, new zinc-based batteries
Right.
and hydrogen storage, and all the stuff that wasn't available before that is now reaching parity with cost with everything else. So now it's going to be, hopefully in the next few years, as cheap to put batteries on your own home as it once was to put solar panels.
And what's interesting is in 2008, you know, when it all began, the utility seemed to say, look, we're going to have clean energy, you guys do it. You know, let us know. let us know when you're ready. But we're not going to do it. So we do generation. Okay, that's changing now. All of a sudden, they're the ones looking to incorporate that storage in their own system. They're the ones who are looking to incorporate large PV farms. So they're not leaving it to someone else. They're actually trying to incorporate it with it, and that's to stay relevant.
Absolutely.
In a transitional time.
There's a study, I think, done by I think the Rocky Mountain Institute that came out in February this year that said it'll be within a decade that the average person will see parity, meaning it's going to cost them as much to go completely off the grid and have their own solar panels and batteries or whatever it is, as it will cost them to stay on the grid. And once we hit that point, then it's a whole new ballgame for a lot of people. So I think you see utilities, not just here, but across the nation, trying to get ahead of that curve and transition their own business model and their own technology to prepare for that and best serve folks in this new century.
What did one speaker call it? The backbone. They're going to be the backbone. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to reiterate what Chris said earlier, and that is about this, and this is why I said this in my remarks at the Clean Energy Day, and is that we really need to ramp up this conversation, because basically you've got this vertically integrated, utility-driven model here versus the DG. How would you consumer-driven model over here? Yeah, right. And so what do you do here? And I think that's part of the exciting thing that's going on, is having this conversation and trying to come up with some solutions that will help everyone.
That's the remarkable thing. I mean, I think the legislature, more than in other areas, is directly involved in the leadership of the transformation, you guys. And it's a combined effort. It's many people say there's no leadership because there's no one person or one iconic czar kind of running it, but we have our own way of doing things.
I mean, I'll be a benevolent dictator, folks let me.
But somehow it's getting done, don't you think?
Yeah.
And I'm actually more optimistic after the clean energy conversation, because every month or so I have a show with Marco Mangelsdorf, who is a solar provider in Hilo, and he follows the numbers about the decline of solar installations according to permits, and he's also identified the fact that mainland solar companies are coming here and they're doing better. Why? Because they have great financing products, and that solves the problem for a lot of people. But I think, and we've seen a decline in the number of installations, and for that matter, consolidation in the industry. But I think what's going to happen here, I mean, whatever the other elements are, I think what's going to happen is it's going to take off again. Yeah. People are going to say it's okay, it's all right to get into solar. It's not a risk. Yeah. A lot of that has to do with interconnect, Yeah. That's good. So
and that's what I mentioned, like the Elon Musks, the guys at Silicon Valley, that they're people that are working on this thing 24/7, because they see it as a bottomless pit of opportunity to do something about this issue. You've got all these folks here that we after HECO's September 6th directive, basically saying that you must go to them and get permission to put PV. I mean, it's there are a lot of angry people that are they see their neighbors paying $17 a month, and they're still paying the state average of $230 a month, and they're going, wait a minute, I want to do that. Yeah. And I can't do that. Why
I think
not?
As well, you're going to see a transition and a transformation in the industry itself. So you're not having companies just be strictly solar installers, but now they're moving on to what's next, which is storage and offering complete home packages. Here, get off the grid, here's your thing. And no one, I think, 10 years ago would have predicted that the solar industry would have doubled every year, year after year after year here. And the question now is, well, what happens next? As technology evolves and you start to see batteries and things like that, will the same thing happen again? Will there be something like it that will take off that we just aren't expecting today?
That's the thing about technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some disruptive thing could happen overnight, tomorrow, who knows?
That's right.
Change everything we've been talking about. Yeah. But one thing strikes me is that solar storage on a large scale, it's now possible. What they're doing in Kauai is a French battery company coming into Kauai, it's big time. And if we can put that on, say, a utility level scale, then the little guy doesn't have to spend $15,000 or $20,000 on his house. This may open a market, or a possibility that we haven't seen. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I wanted to just shout out to the Department of Education, because we have 255 public schools here. They started a pilot project getting solar on top of the schools with 4 schools. They expanded it to 15 schools on Kauai, and then added another 28 schools on Oahu. So there's 47 schools now that have PV systems up on their roof.
That's great.
And the second part of that is, and this is totally separate from the DOE, that's coming out of the general fund in DOE, is this project called Kahe. And Kahe is the Hawaiian word for the god Maui. He used it for his snare to snare the sun, right? But this project here is a joint effort with the DOE and also with Chevron Energy Solutions. And what they're doing is they're looking at this could save $1.1 billion over 25 years. They've got 3 schools that they've identified as microgrids, and because Chevron they've already signed on to install 100 megawatts of clean renewable energy, and then they're going to have a STEM education, water monitoring, and just kind of like a whole package. But to me, as a former educator, that's the kind of stuff, cutting edge stuff that really needs to be trumpeted and having other people follow. It's really mind-boggling how good this project is.
And wait till those kids run for
Oh
office.
yeah.
But not too soon.
No rush. So what do you think is going to happen next session? What's the tone, do you think, looking forward? What are people willing to wrap their arms around? What kind of money is going to be available? Any thoughts?
I do think that the focus on energy in particular, because it's a cost issue for everybody, a pocketbook issue, is getting more and more intense. And we're going to see more and more focus on that. And I'm really excited. You know, we've been talking about a couple ideas for a number of years, moving the goalposts. You know, we've got that 70% that's been the target for quite a while. We're well on our way. But what do you do after that? How do you get to 100%? And to put it in context, this isn't just like a goal we want to be 100% clean. This is saving us money. In 2012, for example, our clean energy renewable portfolio standards saved us roughly $68 million. Saved ratepayers $68 million. That's hundreds of dollars per household because we've taken these steps forward to move away from oil, which is the most expensive thing we could possibly import. So we want to look down the road and hopefully get us to a place where we can plan to be completely free of imports and be completely independent. That's going to strengthen our economy, create jobs, and save everybody money.
Yeah. And I agree that what Chris was referring to was a bill that both of us supported and tried to get through, and that was the, hey, look, 70% is nice, you know, but why not 100%?
Sure.
Why don't we put it up there at 100%? So we had a bill that was actually 100% by the year 2050. And unfortunately, some of our colleagues in some of the other committees that got referred to didn't quite agree and didn't quite make it.
But we'll change their mind.
And that's the thing. I mean, when I first got elected in 2006, I was told that sometimes by one of the veterans there, veteran legislators, he said, you know, sometimes it takes 5 or 6 years to get a good piece of legislation passed. So and I was really upset and kind of pulling my hair out because we worked our cole's off to get this thing done. He said, hey, you did everything right. You got all the stakeholders involved. You did this, this. You just have to.
It's a process.
You did your best. Yeah, it's a
Like
process.
the barrel tax.
That's right.
Year after year, it gets
right.
better and
That's
better.
right.
You know.
That's right.
So, you know, it just strikes me that energy is so historic, and you guys are right in the middle of it. I mean, you know, it's like, Daddy, what did you do during the the clean energy initiative? You know, because it's be over by then. And he says, you really were the chair of the committee. You made this happen. This is historical, what it is. It's fabulous. Yeah. And it also strikes me is that we achieved this, and it changes the way people think about our ability to achieve large projects, to achieve transformations. And then you look at other transformations we need to do, like in food, like in agriculture, like in transportation, fuel, like that. And all of a sudden, we're going to have a different view of the future of the state by the residents of the state, a new level of confidence. And I think this initiative is building that. That's what I think.
Yeah. I'm seeing Senator Mike Gabbard Intermediate School. and then when the folks ask, wow, it's amazing, what were you doing during that energy revolution? They'll then ask, but Senator Gabbard, where were you when Congresswoman Gabbard was solving the Israeli-Palestinian crisis?
I was so happy.
I was there too.
I was so happy you didn't introduce me as Tulsi's dad. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, the other element that we really haven't talked about is energy efficiency, because I think huge strides have been made. It's still in play. The benefits fund is in play. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of savings to be had. And it just so happens that Ray Starling is here, and he might address that and, like throw that issue into the mix. Okay, Ray?
Well, of course, energy efficiency is still the cheapest way to save money with energy. To not use a kilowatt hour is to save the 35 cents for that kilowatt hour that you would otherwise pay. And we're now costing the ratepayers out of the fund about 2 cents, 2 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour saved. That's what it costs to incentivize people to do something that they would not otherwise do. So it's a very cost-effective way to go about it. But there's more. The PUC has also engaged us to get closer to the utility and help facilitate some of the DR and some of the storage and some of the time of use rates that will help people to make that economic decision to change the time of day when they use electricity. So there's still a lot more on the table that we have not gotten to yet. We're starting out as of the 1st of July to head down that road, and it's an exciting road. I want to say before you close out today, though, we've really not addressed 2/3 of the oil use here, and that's transportation. We've talked about it, but I'd like to see us have these gentlemen back soon to talk about transportation and what more can we do with transportation to save that other 2/3 of the oil that we're using now.
Yeah, you saw that in the Clean Energy Day discussion and in the previous Clean Energy last year. And it's a real hard one to get your hands around. People are wedded to their cars, talking about behavior modification on a grand scale. We have a lot of work to do, and I wonder, as a final question, is there anything that Ledge can do about this? Anything contemplated?
Well, there was something that we worked on this past year, and it's piggybacking on new technology. Toyota, GM, Ford, Hyundai, others are about to debut this coming year, 2015, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Look like regular cars. Go down to your auto dealership and buy them. Right now they're being leased. They're on the streets in LA. What they want to do here is use Hawaii as a test bed. We're small enough that it's a great area. You can put in a couple of fueling stations, the gas stations, and you can serve the whole place. At the same time, we're an ideal market because there's a stigma. You think hydrogen, you think Hindenburg. And the technology has really come, obviously, a really long way. It's as safe as your typical gasoline car. And so if we can put in fueling stations and build that infrastructure, and there's a few on the island already, military bases, we can create that saturation so that they can bring cars to the island, convert the rental fleets at the airport, for example, use PV, not connected to the grid, so it won't have an interconnection problem, but PV to generate hydrogen that'll then fuel the fleets and fuel normal cars. And that will then truly take us off our fuel dependency on oil and take us into the next step.
Thoughts?
Well, basically, and Ray's right. I mean, in order to address the whole transportation issue, we really need to hear from, and this is one of the things that where Chris and I work together is, it is a collaborative approach. A lot of times people think, oh yeah, that's what they do down there, but how do I? Well, we actually want people, we need people's input on how we can solve these, whatever the problem, whether it's transportation or rooftops or whatever it might be. So I just encourage people to contact their representative or contact Chris or myself. You got an idea? I mean, great. I mean, there's over 3,000 bills that are introduced every single legislature, and thankfully only about 250 pass into law. But we get those ideas. We need those ideas. We solicit those ideas from constituents, from people all across the state.
You'd be surprised. A number of great bills that have passed at the legislature, innovative stuff, have come from folks calling in saying, hey, I got this idea. Can you help us?
Exactly.
Okay,
We like to take all the credit, but truly it's others.
Their doors are always open.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Call Mike all you want.
Senator Mike Gabbard, Representative Chris Lee, ThinkTech Hawaii's Hawaii State of Clean Energy here on Wednesday, 4 to 5. Me and my co-host over there, out there somewhere, Ray Starling, talking about energy legislation this year. We have to do this again. There'll be more between now and then. We have to sort of compare notes, okay? Thank you, gentlemen.
That's good. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks a
Aloha.
lot.